I've sort of done a bit of an explanation of what freediving is and how we sort of we train as freedivers. And for those who are interested in that, I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration that I do with most of my students, just so you can get a bit of an idea of what happens to our body and our mind as we start to do this kind of thing. So I'm going to start this off by getting us to all hold our breath. And when you do hold your breath, I want you to think about two separate things, right? I want you to think about what happens to our mind as we hold our breath longer and longer. And I also want you to start to think about what happens to our heart rate. So while you hold your breath, I'm going to get you to do two things. One, you're going to start with your hand up in the air like this, right? And when you breathe back in again, you'll drop your hand back down to let us know that you've breathed back in. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to feel your heart rate so that you can kind of get an idea of what happens as things become more and more difficult. Does it increase? Does it slow down? Does it stay the same? What's happening in here that affects this? Okay? Good. Some big nods. We all ready? Great. I'm going to count you down. So hands up. Everybody. Yes, you in the back as well. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, big breath in. And keep holding. That's not going to go. Anyone else's heart starting to slow down? Or our minds starting to speed up a little bit? Oh, everyone dropped then. Some people still going, that's good. All right, Jack, not you. You can put your hand down. Great. That's about 1 minute 20. Well done, guys. Now, the purpose of this is not to try and hold our breath the longest. It's to understand what happens to our mind and our body as we hold our breath. Now, as divers, what we try and do is understand the way that we respond to anxiety or we respond to feelings that our body gives us so that we can kind of have control over it. Once we understand what's happening, we can contextualize the feelings that we get in order to stay nice and relaxed. Whose mind started to speed up a little bit, right? Who started thinking about how difficult holding your breath became? So that the thoughts that were running through your head was like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Oh, this is really uncomfortable. I don't know how I can do this. I don't have to hold my breath the longest as long as I'm holding it like longer than them. And all these sort of thoughts start going faster and faster in our head. Am I right? Did that happen to quite a few people? Yeah, a few nods, right? And what about our heart rates? Did you feel that as things become more uncomfortable, did your heart rate start to speed up with that discomfort and that anxiety around holding your breath? Right? Well, that's a normal thing when we start. You know, we become anxious about those sorts of feelings, and usually our body responds to that anxiety or that discomfort or that unknowing of how long we can hold our breath by stimulating a faster heart rate. Now, what happens when you have a faster heart rate? Burns through our oxygen a little bit quicker. When we train as freedivers, we have to try and learn to do the opposite. We need to become comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, so that we know what we're going to go through. We understand that by holding our breath, we will go through periods of discomfort, right? And we need to know that we're going to do that to prepare for it so that we can remain completely relaxed. We can quieten our mind, right? We can sort of keep our heart rates low and conserve our oxygen as much as we possibly can. So, how do we do that? First thing is embracing the fact that we're going to. Right? Knowing that we are going to be uncomfortable And contextualizing that discomfort helps us prepare for it so that we can remain comfortable as we go into that discomfort. Sounds a little bit confusing, right? But think about it this way. If I know that it's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm choosing to put myself in there to begin with, right? I can go, oh, well, I know this is going to happen. The best way to go into this as much as we possibly can. Right? It's going to take a longer time to become uncomfortable. Right? Preparing for this kind of thing allows our mind to stay stable. Right? When our mind's stable, our heart remains lower. We produce less carbon dioxide, makes it less uncomfortable. One of the last little tricks that we do as freedivers is we learn the difference between relaxation and comfort. So if I ask you guys now, right, I want you to relax and I want you to think calm thoughts, most of you will sit there, or those who haven't already done a freediving course, and go, I'm relaxed. And I'll say, could you relax a little more? Okay? And I'll get you guys to do this now. Try and relax. How relaxed are you? Or are you just comfortable? People think that relaxation and comfort are the exact same things, but if I was to say, if I really relaxed my muscles, what would happen? I'd fall off the chair. But most people don't do that when they say, I am relaxed, because for most people, comfort is relaxation. So there's a couple of little things that we do as freedivers to be able to hold our breath longer. Prepare for the discomfort, right? Know that managing our brain will then have influences on our body. The influence we have in our body then comes back to our mind again. I'm going to introduce you guys to a couple of people here who I've been sort of had the pleasure of diving with and training with. And we're going to talk a little bit about what freediving is for them, right? What got them into it, right? Where it's taking them, and what kind of things it allows them to do. So we have Meredith. Say hello. Right. Mel's kind of one of those adventure junkie kind of people who's gone out things. Is very, very adventurous, and has found freediving as a way of being able to sort of take you into sort of into new sort of realms. Sandra is instrumental in sort of setting up what's called the Wollongong Freedivers. She's also been a real big part in organising some underwater cleanup, which freediving has allowed people to talk a little bit about establishing community and also how freediving has sort of thing like our underwater environment fun. And we've got Nays. Now Nays is a young filmmaker, underwater cameraman, who's also started to explore freediving as a way of interacting with the underwater world. So I'm going to start with you, Nays. Right, I'll pass this over in a moment. I want you to sort of, for those people who are interested in what freediving allows them to do, in terms of a creative sense, I'd like you to sort of talk a bit about the project you're working on and why freediving was sort of important in being able to do that kind of thing.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So the thing with freediving for me is that I originally started off scuba diving as a 12-year-old kid, and one thing that, even though I still scuba diving for me is a very bulky and cumbersome way of moving around in the water. And then when I got into freediving at age 18, that's when I kind of thought, oh, this is a lot less restrictive, and I can feel like I'm more fluid in the water. And for me to feel like I'm part of the ocean allows me to access that part of me that wants to represent the silence and the beauty of it in a way. And in a way, like, I guess, like, because the very first time I discovered freediving was by working on a film shoot where I didn't have scuba equipment and I had to teach myself freediving on the fly. It was kind of really interesting in that way to, you know, develop a much better way of connecting to that and getting the images that I wanted.
Do you find that there's a difference in the interaction that you get with animals between scuba and freediving?
1,000%. Like, I feel like that being a scuba diver is almost like being a noisy. It's very noisy because of all the bubbles, and also like because you're moving very clumsily. Whereas freediving is you can be a far more agile and silent. And one thing that I kind of realized that I made me realize that I prefer freediving was when I did a trip to the Galapagos Islands, where we went to see hammerhead sharks, and they just would not come near us at all because we were so noisy with our bubbles. Whereas the guys who had rebreathers on, which is a type of scuba where you don't exert any bubbles, it was completely silent, and they were right above them in that ride. But in that case, I definitely feel like that even just in somewhere as simple as Shelley Beach in Manly, and you just, zoom through the fish clouds or see Port Jackson sharks lying on the bottom, they are completely unfazed by you because of the silence that comes from freediving.
And I guess, you're an underwater cameraman. You're working on a couple of projects that you incorporate freediving into at the moment. Is being a part of that in a natural way sort of part of the inspiration of what you're working on?
Yeah, but I'm also a practical person in a way. Like, for me, like, to just rock up with, a tub from Bunnings that just has my wetsuit, my fins, mask, and just like completely, like not have to worry about having excess gear and just move. But I feel like that also, like, because freediving really forces you to stay calm under pressure, literally and figuratively, it kind of brings out the better side of my creativity. And also, like, when I'm going deeper, like say deeper than 15 meters to get a shot, I know that the pressure is on to get, and I'm one of those people who kind of works well under pressure. Like, I kind of feel like it brings out the creative side more. So I feel like whereas scuba, you can stay down there for like 6 minutes trying to nail the shot, but when you're freediving, knowing that you only have 1 minute at 25 meters to get the perfect shot, I feel like that there's a kind of hidden beauty in that, in getting the shot.
So would you say that in your experience that part of the freediving photography or videography is not just the image you're creating, but the activity and the achievement in getting the particular imagery itself?
Absolutely. I think that freediving is one of those sports that really brings out the better side of a person, in the sense that it really shows how much you can control your mind and how well there's this great quote from the late great Natalia Molchano, which is, freediving is not only a sport, it's a way to understand who we are. And because I guess Australia is not exactly the most calm place to dive in, I suppose, it really shows you how you can perform and get better.
So Naze, I know you've been off sort of traveling around at the moment, working on a bit of a pilot for yourself. I know that's something you're putting a lot of time, effort, and energy in, self-funding. Do you want to share just a little bit about what that project is for anyone who might be interested?
Yeah, sure. So because I got into freediving while I was in film school and scuba diving, a lot of people would come up to me and say, "You're crazy, you're a nut job, why the fuck do you do that?" But that question of why do you do something so seemingly dangerous sparked the idea, why don't I do a series about that? And shortly afterwards, I met a really amazing, another freediver called Kiki Bosch, who swims in the coldest waters around the world without the protection of a wetsuit. We're talking like 2 to 4 degrees Celsius. And she was kind of like the first person that I wanted to start off this series with. So what I did is, after I left film school, I left my job as well to basically direct and write a pilot about her. And we just went to England and Iceland for 4 weeks, filming her going into super cold water. And that was also fun because I got to freedive and get images for that. And yeah, it was just amazing seeing her in her element, just really apply those psychological lessons I was saying earlier.
I mean, that sounds like a whole nother level of discomfort. I mean, holding your breath, going down really, really deep is sort of challenging enough for most people. You add the pain of ridiculously cold water, and I guess, you need to fortify your mind to be able to cope with pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Do you touch on that as part of what you're filming?
Oh, that's the main thing of the series, is that I feel like that a lot of other documentaries in the past, although they definitely tell good stories, they focus more on the Red Bull adrenaline aspect, whereas for me, the psychology and the character development that happens in these freediving individuals is the most interesting thing for me, and also guess because I'm a film school brat and I like character development, I guess that also feeds into it.
Great. So for those of you who tried to hold their breath before and found their mind starting to go faster and faster and your heart rate going faster and faster and you felt that discomfort build as you were trying to hold your breath longer than the person who was sitting next to you, imagine now for an instant that you've got a whole film crew sitting there looking at you. You're holding your breath, but you have to do a particular task in 2 degrees water with no wetsuit on. Does that sound something that would be infinitely more challenging? Right, I'm looking forward to seeing it, Naze. That sounds like a really cool project. I'm glad that you've been able to explore that one. This takes me over to Mel. Now, Mel, you've had a really interesting sort of story where, and I invited you along to talk because I was sort of inspired with watching you overcome some of the hurdles that got you into freediving. I know that when we very first sort of met, there was a lot of anxiety around doing this. Now, most people when they turn up or they think about learning to freedive, they sort of say, well, I can't hold my breath for more than 10 seconds. and they become super anxious. You know, they sit at home, they try and practice by themselves, and they almost send me emails sometimes saying, I'm really not good at this, I don't know if I should turn up. I said, well, no, you're coming to learn, right? Mel was one of those sort of people who first came up and was really almost apologetic, like, oh, I'm really, I don't think I'm going to do this, you know, well, and was sort of like quite apprehensive, I guess, about things. I mean, you'd been through a fair bit of physical challenges in the sort of thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about where you were at and how freediving helped you overcome some of those mental hurdles that you were experiencing in your life?
Hi, everyone. So yeah, I guess there were a couple of main reasons that I wanted to start freediving or take the course. And one of the main reasons was I started surfing about 6 years ago when I moved here. And actually, I grew up in the on a little island in the South Pacific, Samoa, and I was actually afraid of the ocean, and it's a typical thing for a lot of us growing up there. We tend to like not go into water deeper than neck high, and we don't really learn how to swim. And so coming from that fear of the ocean to now learning to surf, and then I was like, I love it, and I was getting better, but then I would work myself into a panic when I'd be paddling out, and I would just start getting this anxiety about how long I was going to hold my breath for, and not catching waves because of that, just not going out because of it. And I just really saw that I wasn't going to progress unless I got over the fear of holding my breath and thinking I was going to die. And so that was one main reason. And the other was that because over the last probably 6 years of changing my relationship with the ocean, I'd met a lot of people, and I'd seen in Hawaii these guys just going down, and they look so peaceful, and they're enjoying the wildlife in this really relaxed state. And it was like pretty beautiful. I guess Nate's touched on it as well. And I wanted to feel that. And coming from a place where I was looking at them thinking, wow, I'll never be able to do that. I can't even equalize. I just, it was something that I thought I couldn't do, but I really wanted to take it another level and get over this fear that I had. So I started, I absolutely got that benefit from it. Like I since then, I've challenged myself in surf that I wouldn't have normally gone out by myself, and I was able to just relax in that instance, because usually I'd paddle out and I'd see all these guys and I would think, oh yeah, they're really confident, but then I actually talk to them and they're like, oh, I hate holding my breath and that kind of thing, and so I felt like I had an advantage over them in a way, because I was able to relax and
take that, guys.
And then I knew what my limits were, I guess, because I'd gone through this education, and I'm quite a technical person anyway, so I appreciate that. And one thing, it was actually a surprising aspect of my freediving experience and learning was that with the breath hold, so that was one thing I was really anxious about, I think I did 45 seconds.
40. So Mel started out and she did
I was the
45
worst.
seconds. Not the worst.
I think I was.
It's all your own goals. But so Mel started off with 45 seconds, right? 45 seconds was like the maximum breath hold that she was, and I remember being there and watching her just go, oh, you know, like it is so nervous that you would see her like lock up, and if I put a little pulse oximeter so I can read her heart rate was just going up and up and up and up and up and up, becoming super anxious about achieving something rather than, you know, moving through it. Do you remember the moment or what happened when you had when all of a sudden that swapped for you?
Yeah, I guess like the thing that I experienced was that I was able to almost, when you flip the switch of, because normally through life I'm just like, you know, you feel pain, you feel discomfort, and you want to like tap out and make yourself feel better. And I guess when I actually came to freediving, like, just to get personal with you, I was going through one of the worst times of my life. So like Lucas mentioned, I'd fractured my spine about a year before that, and so I was feeling incredibly vulnerable, not just physically but, you know, emotionally, and I was grieving for a huge loss in my life. So yeah, really going through months of doing whatever you do to numb the pain and escape it in a way, and like flipping the switch in this instance of when you do the breath hold. The process of doing a breath hold is that you recognize what you're going to feel, like you're actually prepared. You know what you're going to feel, but you know logically, physiologically, you're fine. And the choice you make to make yourself feel better is just reacting to that emotion and the fear that comes with it. So in that moment of like deciding to make a logical decision and not be so reactive to your emotions and your feelings, was like, I found it like a really liberating experience, because I likened it to how we all kind of like react in life, right? Like, I'm not special, so a lot of people are exactly like that, and yeah, go through stuff, and then we're very reactive, and like I touched on before, we are in such a hectic society and we're so distracted and all of that. And the beauty that I found of being able to do something differently, like usually I'm an adrenaline junkie and I like get high on endorphins, and to make myself feel better, I'd surf harder, work harder, whatever. And this was just like such a different way for me to get just to feel better and get that.
So did you find that the lessons that you were kind of learning, or the psychology and connection, right, that you were experiencing when you were learning to freedive, also had applications to your everyday life and mental health?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it's such a. I would say that the being able to react differently and make a more logical choice kind of gives you in real life like confidence that you can make a less emotional decision. So separating our emotions from our reactions and just being able to make that
having control
control
about the way that we make decisions.
Yeah, just having more control over yourself and your emotions and your reactions to situations.
And where is it taking you now? Because I know that, I mean, you started here. Mel started with 45 seconds, right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of you guys held your breath for a little bit longer than that. You're like, 45 seconds? That's nothing. But for some people, it's a really big challenge, right?
Yeah.
Now you have progressed. You've sort of kept at it, and I've watched your development. Right, where have you taken to this now, and do you have, you know, any goals to take that any further?
Yeah, so I did the course with you in September, and I was able to, pretty much that night, I did 3-minute breath hold, and not to like get like, I don't know, big-headed about the number, but it was really just the fact that like I wasn't thinking about a time, I wasn't really thinking about anything, I was just actually like embracing and trusting the process and myself, and so I managed to complete the course and do the 20-meter dive, and then a few months later I trained in the pool training that we do regularly for CO2 tolerance and and diving technique, and I was able to do the 30-meter deep dive course.
So for you, I mean, I don't think it's all about the numbers, as you were saying
No.
before. What I wanted to sort of touch on was that, you know, like you have goals of being able to feel stable in the decisions that you make, right? I mean, and has freediving allowed you to achieve those? And do you see like further goals with what you're doing coming from this?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with the freediving, it was just this thing where, you know, we're so used to being in a box and just being on autopilot and just living within this like limitation that we place on ourselves because of like fear, I guess, and not really thinking outside the box. And for me, it was such a big thing to show me when I step out of my comfort zone how much I can achieve and just what is possible that, you know, like things that I feel like I can't do. It's like, well, I don't know that I can't do them because I haven't tried them. And so that's exactly how I felt with freediving. And so, yeah, I have heaps of goals. I don't think I'm going to be a pro surfer like I'd love to, but I don't know.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
I guess what I've been so inspired by, Mel, and the reason I got you up here is I watched you come in so like with a lot of self-doubt and a lot of sort of worry and anxiety about the things that you wanted to achieve. And every time you put pressure on yourself to achieve, you would kind of hold yourself back. And when you eventually let go of those expectations, when you sort of let go of, you know, the need to constantly impress yourself or others, all of a sudden, you know, you were liberated in that. And it's been nice to see you continue those.
Oh, sorry, spearfishing. That's my next goal.
All right.
So with this, and cave diving in Hawaii. So I've got lots of things to do as goals.
No holding her back now. Has anyone else sort of felt that sort of feeling? You know, you want to give something a try, but the self-doubt or the expectations that we place on each other in some way stop us from even trying. It's a really, really common thing. A lot of people will just go like, I'd love to do what they do. You know, see these beautiful images of people like diving down into the depths, right? Or swimming with whales and you know, looking incredible underwater. And people will go, I would love to do that, but I'm just me. Surely they're superhumans, right? Surely I can't hold my breath for that long. That's ridiculous. But I guess one of the amazing things is that we are all capable of doing these things if we embrace the process of doing it. Now, Mel is a prime example of somebody who came and sort of said, well, I can't do this. And all the little mental blocks that she had at the time said, no, I don't, I can't, I won't. And when we unlock those, when we start sort of, as you say, stepping outside the box and start embracing the process of changing the way we think, you realize that any of these things are possible. So thanks for sharing that, Mel. And we're going to move over to Sandra.
Hi.
So Sandra, again, is one of those sort of people who some of you may know. She's been a fantastic, a couple of the teammates there. Sandra's been one of these sort of people. Now, you weren't necessarily as involved in the technical side of freediving to begin with. I guess when I first heard of you, you were setting up the Wollongong freedivers, not from like an instructor's point of view where you were kind of, you know, chasing the sport, but more getting people together who love the ocean to be able to kind of engage with it in a different way and have now gone on to organize all sorts of underwater cleanups as well as other sort of fun events. And you're really about that promoting that community, I guess, which is why so many people of us are here. Do you want to talk us about, like, for anyone else out there who also, you know, wants to be a part of the community or sort of start their own sort of group or event, talk us through some of the challenges or your inspiration in first creating the Wollongong Freedivers, and then some of the challenges that you've been through in establishing that group and some of the events that you've done.
Hi. So my story basically is I started freediving with Gold Coast Freediver. And very shortly after I started freediving, within about 8 months, I had to move to Wollongong. So I was literally, you know, heartbreaked. Had a heartbreaking massively because I moved to Wollongong and the only closest club that we could train at was in Sydney. with Jack as well there. So Sydney was a good an hour and a half after work, so it was just a bit of logistically it was a bit hard. So I started by messaging on Deeper Blue, on a couple of chats to see if I could find someone to train with me on Wollongong. And rapidly I found a very good friend, Hilary. She's actually a very good Spiro, and we decided together to create that a group in Wollongong. It's actually my good mate on the go. So to start your club, all you need is really to have some core people in your group. So you need to be at least 2.
Did you say core or cool?
Cool. Both. Cool is better because it attracts more people then. But you need that core group, because when you're by yourself, it's a bit hard, you know. So initially it was just me and Hilary. Then Hilary moved to New Zealand, and then the group kind of went down again until we started to attract a few more people. So now we have like a core group of maybe, I would say, 8 to 10 people that come regularly into training. And we follow a bit the training that they would do in Sydney freedivers or Gold Coast freedivers. So we basically try to have a training that is, you know, inspired by what others do. And we have as well a little coach that we speak to now and then, and that would give us, you know, some tips. Like Luca as well always jumps in and say, hey, you should do the exercise and, you know, work together. Yeah, so I think it's about having that support group together.
And have you noticed that it's a growing kind of thing?
Yeah, it's definitely growing, especially now that we've been more on social media with all this underwater cleanup. So the underwater cleanup, you have a lot of people that just come to training to either improve their skills for spearfishing, a lot of Spiro. Some people that now want to get into competing, like for example Alessio that is here, Alex and Aaron, that are now, you know, they want to start competing. And well done, Alex, for the 5-minute 38 at the last comp. That was really good. So we have those core people that are pushing the training higher and higher. And then you have, on the side, we started to do a lot of underwater cleanup. Just because Wollongong, we have a harbor that tends to be very dirty. So usually what you find in the harbor is stuff that would get into stormwater drain, end up in a harbor. A lot of this stuff is stuff that people just throw in the water. There is no point of having, you know, like some bikes in there, some shopping trolley, some heavier items, a fire extinguisher. Like the amount of stuff that we found in the water is quite interesting.
What's the weirdest thing that you found?
How do you call that? Like the stuff to smoke pot?
I have no idea.
Like a bong, yeah. We found 2, okay, so it's actually one of the top items we find in there. But fire extinguisher, underwears. We found heaps of underwears in Wollongong Harbour. I don't know why.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. And you said, I mean, we were talking about not only the sport but the community growing. And I guess you touched on people. There was a growing interest in the sport where people are wanting to be competitive, and so they're bringing their friends in who also want to be competitive. But do you also have people who are just generally wanting to find a new way to connect to the ocean? And are you getting converts from the scuba diving community wanting to come in and give things a go? Where are the people coming from, and what, you know, your group, where, you know, you said it's growing and growing and growing. Yep. You know, what do you think's drawing them to this community?
I think it's a lot of word of mouth, but a lot of people that are within that community are people that are genuinely a bit of an activist, a bit of people that want to help, you know, the planet, want to make a statement, want to help cleaning other people's rubbish. And it's really interesting because even in the group today, when we organize underwater cleanup, just people found that very fun as well. Like we have, for example, Yen and Pierre that travel from Sydney to help out during underwater cleanup. Dominic comes very often as well. Mel here as well comes quite often. So you have, of course, you know, in the background you have this need to want to change things and show people that we want to change things.
Are you saying that cleaning up people's rubbish can be fun?
It is fun. The only thing that wasn't fun last time is when you end up into some oil spill and your whole face is covered in there. But apart from that, it's actually it's actually pretty fun to wondering what you're gonna find and you know, start to piss off the bull rays in Wollongong Harbour, you know. Yeah, and the blue ring octopus as well in the stuff we find.
Well, I mean, and this sounds like a fantastic sort of marriage of ideas there, really. I mean, if you can kind of make cleaning things up fun, right, then
100%.
you know, that's a two birds with one stone kind of thing. I mean, we should get more freedivers, right? And then this place would be spick and span.
Yeah, and look, a lot of people sometimes contact us and they're like, oh, can you help us clean that specific area? And we're like, yes, we can help you, but the truth is, in a harbor, you tend to have the waste get trapped there. The issue is that recently we did another cleanup in Bass Point at the gravel loader, which is a very famous dive site. And we found a lot of fishing waste, of course, you always find that. But really, all the plastic waste, the stuff doesn't actually get trapped. It needs an area where it gets trapped, and a harbor is very good for that.
So
if
people wanted to get involved with this kind of thing, right? If they wanted to, know about your next sort of cleanups that you're organising and become part of the community, do they have to do something beforehand in terms to be able to show that they can free dive to be part of it? And how do they find when the next cleanups are?
Okay, so for the next cleanup, usually everything goes onto the page Wollongong Freedivers. However, you can create your own cleanup as well, you know. If you notice an area, let's say, you know, you're living in the North Shore and there's an area that is very dirty, there's nothing that stops you to actually create your own cleanup and contact the groups that are local, you know. Like you can contact Sydney Freedivers, you can contact us, we could bring a team there. But to come back to the safety aspect as well, we usually ask for people to have a minimum experience, whether they are a scuba, Spiro, or freediver. And then we'd always do a safety briefing before the cleanup. So we always have a map of the area to say you can go here, you cannot go here. Everybody has a buddy. It's super important to have the safety perspective, even if it's very shallow. So always dive with your buddy, never dive alone. And we always make sure that there is someone on a kayak to keep track, to make sure there's no boat traffic and, you know, things like that.
Right.
But yeah,
I guess what I'm touching on here now is that although there's all these amazing sort of things and reasons that people start to free dive, you know, whether it's sort of your own sort of personal development, wanting to overcome particular fears and sort of, you know, progress with the rest of your life, whether it's sort of the creative aspirations that you have and where you want to take those kind of things and your ability to interact with the natural world, or whether it's sort of to be able to create a community and you know, help facilitate looking after the oceans around us. There's also a need to know about the technical side of what we're doing and the safety side of things so that we can do it, you know, safely and responsibly. Now, I'm assuming you guys have all, and you have trained with me, you did your own training with somebody else, and then have come trained with me, Nays, you've trained under somebody else as well. What I'm most inspired by is when I do see people, we have some really amazing instructors here in Australia who really care about their community. They're not out there. It's not like a sort of, you know, put your dollars in and then get your sort of little certification card at the other side. What I'm inspired by, particularly in Sydney, is that you know, the groups that we have are really out there to look after the community and hope that the community then looks after each other as well. So we are going to go, if we're going to go back through a couple of things, I'm going to give you like a little dot point each to sort of talk about just like little take-home message from your perspective. And then after we finish this little talk, I'm going to go through and we're going to do a little demonstration over in the pool. So if anyone wants to come over and have a look at me holding Sandra's head underwater, feel free to do that. And if you guys did ever want to come and be a part of either, you know, the Wollongong Freedivers or the Underwater Academy, which is the group that I sort of run, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram or Google or any of those sorts of different things. So over to you, Nays.
Well, we definitely went over a lot of things that there was just like music to my ears listening to the three of you talk. But one thing that was kind of stewing in my mind as I was listening to all three of you actually was kind of like thinking about how people who want to hold their breath and, you know, get better, because we all want to, you know, see how long it's a natural human desire to do that. But the more I think about it, I think there are...
In the bathtub all the time.
Let's actually, who here has tried to do that as a kid when you were in the bath, like trying to hold your breath? Let's raise your hand if you've done that. See?
Jack, I know you have.
But I feel like that the things to making it not just a long, but actually a successful and happy breath hold, because I think that's why we all do, because we want the joy. I feel like that the two things that if people want to really enjoy freediving are to throw out all expectations out of the window and to have a good buddy that can coach them through. Like if you're trying to push it, like for instance, one night off at uni, I remember we were in this really warm pool, and it was a static session because they had closed off all the big pools because all the kids were swimming in them. And I was just like, okay, I don't know how long I'm going to go. I'm just going to just do it for fun and see how I go. And
For those who don't know, a static is when you sit there laying completely motionless, holding your breath for as long as you can.
And much to my surprise that night, I ended up just going a few seconds over 4 minutes, which to me, I just never even thought possible. And I owe a lot to my buddy at the time, Nathan Watts, for just making it feel like just relax, you're fine. That CO2 is not going to kill you. It's just a natural thing. And yeah, when you were saying about how Alessio, shout out to Alessio over there, for Reach 530, I think it's really because Sandra is a very good coach and was able to facilitate that relaxation. So I feel like the freediving is one of those sports where it's not about being a macho Red Bull adrenaline junkie athlete, but more almost like a Jedi Knight in a way, where you try to hit that zen point and just really relax as much as you can, you know?
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
Talking about freediving, I think, few of us here have a bit of experience with freediving competition, like checking out. I was doing a bit of safety, Aaron as well. We got few competitors there. And it's just when you think about freediving and competition and things like that, you need to think as well that freediving is not about being in competition with someone else. It's about, you basically were dealing with your own demon, like I think your biggest enemy is your mind. So it's not about comparing yourself to someone else. It's about basically just the journey of understanding yourself and pushing yourself rather than always competing and you thinking, oh, I'm going to go on the competition and try to do more than the other person. That's actually not the way it is, and you actually feel that very much when you are in the freediving community with the competition and things like that. It's actually even the highest competitor are absolutely fine with, being next to someone that only does 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's not about that, So I think the community is actually very... is great. I found that the freediving community is great in general. So yeah, it's a good community to be part of.
I'll testify to that. I think that one of the best things I ever see when I'm teaching a course and I have couples who come in, if anyone has a partner that they want to come in and do a course with, I find it always entertaining. You have usually it's a guy, but sometimes it's a girl. They're like, oh, I'll bring my partner in to come in and learn how to do this freediving thing. I do it a bit myself. I'm pretty good at it, and I want them to come in and experience that with me. And there's expectations that you put on yourselves, and I know that we all put these expectations on ourselves. And one of my favorite things to do is watch the expectations come into a physical manifestation, because as you may have done before when you were sitting next to somebody and you held your breath at the very beginning of this, you said, I don't need to hold my breath the longest out of everyone here, just more than them. Yeah. And if it's your partner and you're the person who's already, quite good at this, the expectations you place on yourself to be better than them can be really debilitative. You're holding your breath and you're like, oh, and they look over and they're chilled out. I hope he's happy. Do this thing that'll shut him up. Relaxed as hell, no expectations. Whereas the other person sitting there being like, why are they so relaxed? And the more relaxed they are, if you're trying to compete against them, the more tense you are, and your mind starts racing and racing and racing and racing, and it's just, oh, I just have to beat her, I just have to beat her, and all that extra tension and all that extra sort of mental movement up there, it starts chewing through that oxygen and producing carbon dioxide, make you feel even more uncomfortable, and then you give up. You may have done way better than the other person had you just made this about you. So I'm it's an amazing thing to watch, and it is a good reminder that even though we did talk about competitions, and there is a part of the sport which is about, like competitions, the best way to approach this, and certainly the way that I see the community supporting this the best, is to say that the numbers, if you choose to follow those, are a very personal target. There's something that we work on for ourselves, not to compare to other people. Right? And certainly people do the best when they have somebody supporting them, right, rather than trying to compete against them. Yep.
Yeah, for me, I guess the I'm pretty into personal growth, and the biggest thing for me was, I guess, the personal growth and what you can take for your life, to use in your life, and also and just testing your mind really, and realizing what you are capable of when you let go of that fear and those sorts of mental challenges, and probably the community as well. It's been amazing being part of the freedive community. Like, I meet so many people through surfing, and but I love our freediving community. People are genuinely they care about.
I mean, it's not a competition, but who's cooler?
No comment. No, I love you all. It's being part of the community is really cool. You meet so many cool people, and you're able to just go and travel different countries and do cool stuff because you've got this cool tool in your box.
A lot of cools there. All right, guys. We're going to kind of end things up because we're going to sort of start getting Sandra ready to go over and do this little freediving demo. She's really looking forward to it. Right? If you haven't sort of seen this sort of thing before, I will do a little bit of a talk at the pool. It's going to be similar to at the beginning where I got you guys to hold your breath. What Sandra's going to be experiencing, as well as the anxiety of having to do it in front of everybody, is finding a tool that enables us to be able to relax our mind. See, when you will have experienced this at the beginning as well, when I first got you to hold your breath. As it became more and more difficult, as you held your breath longer and longer, your mind would have become more and more active about the discomfort that you're experiencing. What we've sort of been training for in the pools is to have techniques to be able to sort of shut that down, so that you don't just let that sort of like build and snowball and become more and more erratic. So this is sort of something that we work on slowly and coach each other through, and every time you experience these things, you become better at being comfortable in the experience of discomfort. So feel free to come and check it out. Thanks for being a great audience. Has anyone got any questions? Because we've got about 5 minutes if we just want to shout out a couple of questions. Yes. Okay, so sorry, I just might try and repeat the question for people, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that one of the biggest problems that you were facing is actually the equalization sort of size? Do you scuba as well?
I was before.
And you didn't have any problems with scuba equalization? Ah. Now the other instructors in the room will know exactly why. Yes. So there is a very big difference in the way that people can equalize with scuba and freediving. See, when you leave the surface as a freediver, you have a finite amount of air in our lungs. And as we hold our breath and go down, there's a physics property, a physics law, which applies to our lungs. And by the time we get to about 10 meters deep, we have half the original volume in our lungs. Now, when you are scuba diving, right, you breathe back in at 10 meters and your lungs are full again. Now, if you're one of those sorts of people who uses their diaphragm to try and create pressure to pop our ears, now you imagine if you go like this and try and pop your ears and your diaphragm moves, right? When you're breathing on scuba, you've got a full lung of air and you can squeeze that and pop your ears, no problems, depending on however deep you are. But if you're free diving and we've held our breath and we're going down and we now only have half the amount of air in our lungs, when we try and pop our ears using our diaphragm, right, by creating pressure, our diaphragm now has to fold all the way up inside of our chest, right, and in order to be able to try and squeeze that air. And eventually you get to a depth where it no longer can squeeze that air. It just can't fold up anymore. Our ribs can't kind of collapse in anymore, so you get to what's called like a failure depth for that particular way of equalizing. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you have to, you need to learn a different way of being able to equalize that isn't using your diaphragm to do it. Does that make sense to you? Yep. Cool. There's quite a few people in the room here who'll be able to sort of teach you that kind of thing. It's a small technical kind of thing. And free diving, as well as being the psychological and physiological experience, there are some technical sort of things like that we do need to learn as well. Cool. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks very much, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Big round of applause for Mel, Sandra, and Nays. Thanks so much for them giving their time up to come up and talk about their experiences. And we'll see you over in the pool if you want to come and watch.